Well, I'm at Chapman Leonard headquarters in North Hollywood, California, which I call the Mecca, where it all started, right? And I'm sitting here with Easy. How's it going, Easy?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
It's an honor.
Most of the industry, you hear a lot of nicknames. You go by Easy.
Yeah.
You want to give us your full name, your title here at Chapman?
Yeah, my name's Eric Zucker. Like I said, most people know me as Easy. Actually got that name when I first got behind the dolly back in the late 90s, and it kind of stuck. It kind of started as a joke and stuck, but you know, it's weird to be known more as your nickname than your actual name.
Right.
I've been over here at Chapman now for about a year. Like I said, been a dolly grip for many years, and now I'm the GM of operations over here.
We're going to go ahead and talk about Chapman later, but I want to talk a little bit more about you, the shows you worked on, and the actors that you worked with.
All right. Well, you know, I mean, I've been pushing dolly for a lot of years. I've done many shows, from The Mandalorian to Star Wars to, you know, all the Star Treks to Boston Stranglers to Hotel Artemis to Memoirs of a Geisha, Mentalist. I mean, sheesh, go on and on. Station 19. Let's see, what other? Forgotten, 11th Hour. I mean, there's hundreds, but spent a lot of years, you know, enjoying what we do. I'm very proud to know that I'm a grip, and I'm a grip first.
Well, let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about who or what inspired you to become a grip.
Well, that's it. You know, so when I was out of high school, obviously most guys know I spent a lot of time in the water surfing. I was doing a little surf movies, and I met a guy. For years, his nephews were professional surfers, and we were doing a lot of surf movies. I was still competing myself, and his name was Thomas Curran, a local lady grip. And Thomas used to tell me, you would love what I do. And at first I owned a surf shop. I opened my first surf shop when I was 21. And, you know, I was super content there. I didn't really think too much of it, but I loved cameras, and I loved camera movement. And he started talking to me more and more about it. He ended up getting me a day, and the rest is history. I fell in love.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the dolly grips that helped you learn your craft.
Well, I was very lucky when I came in, right? I owe a lot to, first of all, to Dave Richardson. Dave Richardson was the first one to give me the big shot. He used to let me play with the dolly every day after work, and I would spend hours after work playing around. I'd say, hey, can I close the truck up? And I would stay after and just play with the dolly. I would practice moves. You know, I would design my own shots in my head and try to achieve them. And I remember him asking me, you really want to do this, kid? You know, I was in my early 20s, and I was like, oh, this is so awesome. And he literally called me that next night and said, you're on. Now, back then, we only had one camera. So the pressure was on you, right? You either succeed or fail. And luckily, I had a very good operator we used to call Big Ed.
Big Ed.
Yeah.
All right.
And Ed was very patient and taught me a lot. Shortly after that, I started pushing more and more dolly on, you know, smaller projects, and I got lucky to become a dolly grip with Scott Robinson and work behind the legend himself, Brad Ray.
Brad Ray.
Yeah.
Wow, how was that experience?
That was incredible. Brad taught me, it wasn't the nuts and bolts of pushing dolly, right? It wasn't lay a mark here, hit this. He taught me more about what a dolly grip should act like, and how he should interact with an operator, how he should look at a scene, how you should look at angles of the cameras. You know, when we started, we didn't have monitors, right? So you had to learn lens sizes, and you had to, you know, take a peek in the eyepiece to see frame lines and things like that. And I think Brad taught me a demeanor, you know, and I don't even know if he knew he was teaching me any of this, you know. Brad taught me a lot of other things about nuts and bolts of, you know, how to lay track and things like that. But he also just taught me how to be a dolly grip, how it means a lot to be a dolly grip.
By watching him.
Exactly.
Wow, that's great. What key grips did you work under when you were going through this dolly process?
Yeah, well, at that time I was working a lot with Scott Robinson, a tremendous key grip. I'm sure a lot of us know his work, from Memoirs of a Geisha to Gone in 30 Seconds to, rendition, trying to think of all it's going way back in my memory bank. But, I was also working a lot with like guys like Bud Scott. I spent a lot of years with Bud, and Bud's another very, very intelligent key grip who taught me a lot indirectly, but also gave me a lot of freedom. I spent a lot of years with guys like Mike Catanzarite.
Yeah, love Mike.
We all love Mikey.
Yeah.
Also lucky to work with guys with Jimmy K and doing movies with Pat Hefferman and Max Thorpe and all these other guys that indirectly they've taught me so much through the years, with whether or not it's the freedom to be the dolly grip that I need to be, but also with bouncing ideas off each other. You guys all know I'm very hands-on behind the dolly, and it helped me be better for my operator, better for my DP, but just a better dolly grip in general.
Any specific crane or dolly shot you're particularly proud of?
Wow. Well, one of the ones I'm really proud of is at the very end of Memoirs of a Geisha, right? There was a shot, where we're up in San Francisco, we're shooting, in the Golden Gate Park, and we're on the water. And I remember Brad was like, looked at me, and we were walking an aero crane, over the water, and wanted to walk the rail. And I remember Brad said, "Hey, this one's for you, kid," and so I got to do it with Peter Roosevelt and, kind of get that position, be able to be in that position. But that meant a lot because I was a youngster at the time, and I was really just falling in love with being a dolly, and he put me on the spot to do one and do a big one. And that one, I don't think I'll ever forget.
Let's talk about what advice would you give to a grip who's interested in moving up as a dolly grip?
Well, best advice I can give you is learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask your key when you're not working, or ask your A dolly grip. We were very lucky, and I say we, us old guys, see by all the gray.
Yeah,
but when we came up, it really was a procedure where you started as a grip, then you were a extra dolly on those days, or a second unit, then you became the B, and you spent B time, and then you became the A. Through those years, you got to learn a lot from the A and stuff like that, and you just watched, and you look at the way when he was interacting with his DP, whether or not it was getting measurements or laying marks, and understanding that those are parameters, not, those aren't set in stone, because we're playing off of actors, we're playing off of lights, we're playing off of, emotions, right? And the dolly is another tool to express all that. So when you're doing it, you really want to learn the scene, learn the camera movements, learn how the dolly works. What's the best piece of equipment for this? So have passion.
Have passion and enjoy what you do.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this question. Your bucket list. Is there anything left on that bucket list you want to cross off in this industry before you put the tool belt up?
It used to be to work with certain actors, and to me, it's one of the biggest things on my bucket list still is to do stuff you still love. And a few years ago, I remember I think we were doing Mandalorian at the time, which is a very big, project, right?
Yes.
Or it might have been Star Trek, another big project. And I remember sometimes as you start moving up in your career, you start doing the bigger and bigger movies, right? Mm-hmm. But you slowly forget when we first came into this thing, when you had no money and you were doing these low budgets, the creativeness that was, meant something to you. And I remember I was gone in Peru doing Transformers at the time, and I got a call from a DP named Ben Cutchins, right? And he said, "Hey, I got this project I'd love you to come out to Boston and do." And I was sitting there thinking for a while, like, I don't want to go to Boston, it's freezing, it's this. But he was really talking to me about about the shots. And when we talk about bucket lists, one of the things on my bucket list is always going back to doing things that are motivating to me, that aren't about the big toys, that are sometimes just about the camera movement and the dolly and being very cinematic. And so I said yes, and I went back, and that was actually Boston Strangler.
Okay.
And when I left that movie, I gotta tell you, it was one of my favorite movies that I've done. And it's not because of how big we went, but it was how intimate we went. you know, with the camera movements and the cranes, and every shot had a pulse to it, and it had a meaning behind it. And, you know, that's, again, back on my bucket list. I think it will never be content to say I'm done with my bucket list. I still want to do things that make my heart pound and give me excitement.
Right. So then, you know, that leads me to my other question. Do you miss pushing dolly?
Oh, tremendously.
Tremendously?
Tremendously. I mean, I love what I'm doing. I'm loving helping other people. I'm loving being a part of design and R&D to help keep pushing the industry to other levels. That's also a huge passion of mine. But I love being a dolly grip. I like I said before, it was passion. I take a lot of pride in what I did behind the dolly.
Name a piece of equipment that you saw and worked with that you knew was going to change the game.
You know, I'm definitely going to say articulating arms. Mm-hmm. You know, I think, you know, when cranes first came out, you know, in the 90s, we were dabbling with them. You know, Simon J's just brought them over here, and Derlin and the boys, right? But they still weren't all the way out there, right? It was still a issue to get them. It was a big, either being a big feature or somebody was going to spend a lot of money because there was very few of them. But I really think the first time I jumped behind a crane, I felt a whole new sensation and magic, right? All of a sudden, you know, I'm one of those guys, you know, a lot of guys that work with me know that I run the pickle on the arm myself. And obviously I did that at the start because we didn't have a lot of techs, you know, so a lot of these guys would drop it off and be like, more like, I don't want to touch it, you know.
Right.
I'm afraid, you know, of this shot. And I was always a guy who was not afraid. I love being on that spot.
I love it too, man.
Yeah, it's the adrenaline, right?
It is, and you're right.
You know, going back to the thing, I think the crane was the first thing that changed me. Like I said, I fell in love with the dolly when I first got on it, and then the crane brought me to an all nother level, like of understanding more of what I could do.
Which one's your favorite, dolly or crane? But it sounds like
my dolly, hands down, is a hybrid. I grew up on a hybrid, and then, you know, when I went to television for a short time, you know, I think in the early 2000s where I was mainly doing television, I got into using a Hustler because it was a little bit more of a, you know, stage dolly.
That's my personal favorite.
Yeah,
Hustler.
and you know, it's got so much, you know, room on it. It's got a lot of stability. It's got a lot of great pluses. But my heart always stood with my hybrid, and so, you know, I was a big push with Leonard at the time to get back to the hybrid when the Hybrid 4 came out, getting roundy round in that aspect. So when that came out, I was lucky enough to receive the first one.
Oh, that's great.
And so Leonard gave it to me. I had it the entire time, and then they came out with the 5, and I remember he called me right away and said, "We have the first 5. Would you like to try this one?" So Shafi drove it down to me. I used it. I loved it. He said, "Do you want your 4 back?" I said, "No, I'll keep this one." So I kept that until I worked here. In fact, it's been all over with me. I've had it the entire time. Up until a year ago, nobody else has used it except for me.
So. Oh, yeah? You put that away on a shelf?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't let this one out until I go back out again?
I was very blessed to be able to keep it working.
Okay. All right, well, let's talk all things Chapman.
Let's do it.
Let's change gears, turn the page, which I just did. Okay, who pulled you into the chair?
Well, this has been something that's kind of been in the works for a while. You know, it started with Leonard and Big Chuck, Charlie's dad, talked to me about maybe 10, 12 years ago.
Oh, so this goes way back.
This goes way back. They were trying to get me to come over here and be a tech because I tech cranes as well. And so they were trying to get me over here with hopefully a future at Chapman. And at the time, I still had so much stuff I wanted to do. And I kept saying, you know, someday. And Charlie and I stayed really close. So I just always had this great respect for Charlie. And you know, he started calling me last couple of years saying, "Hey, we should talk. Let's talk about a couple things." And then when he took over the company, called me again and said, "Hey, just want to let you know this is what's going on. Not only do I want your input on where we can go, but I want to talk to you about some future things." And then I think I just got back from Boston, did a couple movies out there, and I just signed on to do Station 19 when Charlie called me and said, let's talk.
Yeah.
Come have some lunch with me. So I went and had lunch with Charlie, and we and Chris DeFranco and Simon actually, and known them all for years, and started talking about where we want to see Chapman going, and that excited me.
That ran into my next question, which is, how does Chapman benefit by having you on their team?
Me being here for the first time, we get to look at these parts and go, okay, I see why you guys are building that, but we won't use that. Right. That's not how we're going to use it, or, we'll configure that in a completely different way. So let's do this, or, sometimes it's the most simple things, right?
It really is.
Just how we're going to change our wheels from going indoors and outdoors. So I think me coming here was the first time Chapman has finally said, we want to know more about the field. We want the field. We want to interact with the field, and we want the field to interact with us.
Yes. Kind of a question I was going to lead into again, this is great, is what space are we in right now?
So right now here you guys are in Studio 45.
Studio 45.
Right,
and why is it called Studio 45?
Studio 45 was from 1945, the year Chapman Leonard was established from Leonard's father.
80 years.
Yeah, 80 years.
So it happened right here.
All right here. And, we do a lot of classes with Local 80, with 600, the SOC, AFI. We encourage dolly grips. And I tell every dolly grip out there, right? You want to get familiar with equipment. You're starting a show? Come in here. Let's build your package. Let's design this. But let's also take that time for you to come in with your DP and go, hey, we're talking about running a, fixed arm and this on a remote hand, and I really want to get used to it, or design. He wants to see how it'll work with this. Utilize us. Utilize this studio.
Wow, that's a huge plus.
Yeah.
And that's another question. This is just fantastic how we're leading into these questions is that how does Chapman stand out amongst the competition?
Well, I think one thing that we are is a customized, company.
Yes.
And back to Leonard saying, I can design a dolly, but you guys are the ones that make it better, right, with your accessories. And I think that goes into what we do here is we still keep customizing, right? We know that obviously Leonard made an incredible dolly, but there's so many different, aspects to using that dolly, right? And so, by taking all that here and taking all that knowledge of what we do and creating new parts and creating things that are outside the box, right? We're able to get more out of these dollies. So I think that's the big thing that makes us stand above is pushing the limits.
And to add to that on my end, Chapman, Mr. Leonard, has always listened.
Always. Still to this day, he shows up here 3 to 4 days a week.
Wow.
And he walks around and still looks at everything and still wants to know exactly what the background is on this piece of equipment that we're building. Why is it going to better us on set? He still asks me that question. He goes, so I see what you're doing here. How is it going to affect us better on set?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how much he loves still what we do.
Yeah, from the little Cobra down to
73-footer.
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, and that, is another thing that's changed the game, right? It was the first big crane.
I was going to say, what can we expect from Chapman in the future? But
I think, what you can keep expecting in the future is we're going to keep evolving. We're going to keep staying relevant with filmmaking and what is needed on set, not just what we have. And I do think it got a little bit that way where we, for a while, because we had such a great piece of equipment, we kind of sat with what we have. What you're going to see in the future is us evolving. We're talking about, readable arms a little bit, to help do MoCo shots, and things like that, to be able to integrate a little bit with the technology behind these remote heads, these readable remote heads like the M7, that we can do programmable moves, right?
Right.
Why can't we program our arms to do these programmable moves as well? And we're there. We're just figuring out how we really want to integrate it, because one thing I don't want to ever see happen is I want to keep the dolly grip involved.
If you had to do it all over again, easy, would you still be a grip?
100%.
100%. Why?
Because there's so many different levels of gripping. And so I would never change being a grip ever, and having that base. I think, we start with a base and a foundation.
Yeah, right.
What the word grip gives you is base and a foundation.
Wow.
So
Easy. Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here at Chapman as well.
I'm stoked
helping
to be
us
here.
out on the set and listening to our problems and solving them through your facility here, the Mecca.
Well,
Thank you.
it's a team. It's a team here, but it's a team out there too. And
Absolutely.
we want to be part of that team.
I'm just glad that you're now part of this team. It shows me that Chapman is moving forward by bringing individuals like you into their mix and creating all this beautiful product for us to use on set, man.
Well, thank you. One team for sure, brother.
Thanks a lot, bro.
You know,
Solid.
it's rock.
Fucking solid, bro.
It's funny when I get around another filmmaker, I can talk for hours.
Right?
Like, hey, Mike, I got something for you.
Oh, dude. I got my shirt. Thanks, Easy. Appreciate you, bro.
Love you, buddy.
All right. Thanks a lot. See you next time.